Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call this meeting to order now. Welcome to the special meeting this Monday evening, September 19th. Mr. Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Rodriguez?
Here.
Councilmember Goethals?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Pappen?
Here.
Mayor Bonilla?
Here. Thank you very much. So now we want to give an announcement we've been giving for a little while since returning to in-person meetings. After more than 2 years of going through the pandemic and having remote meetings, we're excited to be here in person, and we have options for those who choose to not be in person and still participate virtually. There are several ways to participate. For those attending in person, complete a yellow request to speak slip and hand it to the clerk. If participating remotely, use the raise your hand feature in Zoom, and you'll be called on at the appropriate time. If calling in via telephone, press *9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press *6 to unmute. These options for public comment will remain available until I close the public comment period for that specific item. So we'll begin this study session item, which is sustainability-related amendments to the 2022 Building Code. And I believe we have a staff presentation.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and members of City Council. My name is Andrea Chow, and I'm the Sustainability Analyst with the City of San Mateo. The goal of my presentation is to introduce the REACH codes for the 2022 Building Code cycle and hear feedback from the City Council regarding these options. This presentation will start with some background information on REACH codes and the importance of addressing building electrification and EV infrastructure. I will summarize the city's current REACH codes and then also introduce proposed REACH codes for both new construction and existing buildings. I will also provide an overview of other policy approaches to decarbonize the existing building stock and summarize feedback from the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission and community. So starting with some background information, the San Mateo City Council has a strong history of prioritizing sustainability and climate action to reduce community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. The city's 2017 greenhouse gas inventory reflects the emissions associated with everyday activities in San Mateo, and this snapshot shows how transportation and the built environment account for most of our emissions in our community. Addressing building electrification and electric vehicle infrastructure through REACH codes is a strategy in our climate action plan, and it is also a city council priority to explore decarbonizing existing buildings and phasing out the use of fossil gas, also known as natural gas, in buildings by 2030. The California Building Standards Code is updated every 3 years, and every local jurisdiction in California is required to adopt the new building code. The building code has a total of 12 parts, and the Green Building Code, also known as Cal Green, is specifically critical to sustainability. Cities have the option to adopt REACH codes, which are local amendments to the building code that reach above the state building code requirements to require more sustainable design. REACH codes that we will discuss this evening would amend the next building code cycle, which is January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2025. The city has a lot of support in the development and adoption of building REACH codes. Peninsula Clean Energy, PCE, is a joint powers agency established in 2016 to provide clean electricity in San Mateo County. In the previous code cycle, PCE supported jurisdictions in the adoption of REACH codes. They provided cost-effectiveness studies, model ordinances, and technical support to city staff. This year, PCE is leading the newly formed Bay Area REACH Codes group. That includes East Bay Clean Energy and Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the CCAs and the other jurisdictions, and providing that same type of support to local governments. Throughout this presentation, I will reference the Bay Area REACH Codes group that has been spearheaded by PCE. I'd also like to take this moment to introduce Blake Hershaft, a programs manager with Peninsula Clean Energy, and Jose Garcia, who is with TRC, an energy and environmental consulting firm that have joined our meeting via Zoom and are available to answer questions this evening as Zoom panelists. So building electrification refers to the transition from gas equipment to electric equipment for space heating, water heating, clothes drying, cooking, and more. Phasing out the use of fossil gas in buildings is extremely important because fossil gas is a fossil fuel that is primarily composed of methane. Leakage from fossil gas infrastructure adds to emissions, and there are also health and safety concerns associated with the transmission and use of fossil gas in homes. In contrast, PCE supplies electricity that is virtually 100% GHG-free to the community. So while electricity has become cleaner, fossil gas is a fossil fuel producing significant emissions. Often concerns arise about electrification and resilience. Gas appliances do not offer more resilience, as most modern gas equipment depends on an electric pilot light ignition to operate. Also, in times of serious emergencies, gas and electricity are both shut off to prevent accidental combustion. In terms of grid capacity, PG&E is aware and supportive of city efforts to require electrification through REACH codes. PG&E fully expects to meet the needs that all electric buildings will require. Bolstering EV charging infrastructure is an important priority. As shown on a previous slide, transportation accounts for 50% of our community emissions, and the state established ambitious goals around electrifying vehicles, and by 2035, all new passenger cars and trucks, or the sale of passenger cars and trucks, will have to be zero emission. The sale of EVs in San Mateo County has grown rapidly over these past 10 years. Last year, we saw 20% of new vehicle sales were electric. To meet the state's aggressive climate goals, millions of more charging ports will need to be installed throughout the state. The California Energy Commission estimates that 70% of people need access to at-home charging to enable more EV adoption and a more electric fleet. Now I'm going to review our proposed REACH codes for new construction. The city has adopted REACH codes in the past. The city's current REACH codes that impact new construction include the installation of solar on building types not covered by the Energy Code, the construction of all-electric residential buildings and all-electric buildings with office use, and a greater percentage of electric vehicle readiness than what is required by the state for all building types. These REACH codes will expire December 31, 2022, as the current code cycle comes to a close, so it is critical that new REACH codes be adopted. Proposed new REACH codes will focus on these same areas, building electrification and EV readiness, but it is important to note that REACH codes for solar and battery storage are not a focus, since the 2022 State Energy Code requires solar and battery storage for all types of new construction. Staff recommends expanding on the current REACH code to require all new construction of all building types be all electric. In my previous slide, I shared why building electrification is very important. Building all electric new construction also avoids costly investment in new fossil gas infrastructure. Following the Bay Area REACH Code's model, staff recommends adopting an ordinance that would allow for some exceptions to the electric requirement. The ordinance allows for commercial kitchens and hotel and motel laundry machines to use fossil gas, and also includes a pre-wiring requirement for future electrification. These specific uses are allowed to use fossil gas because of the potential increase in utility bills compared to gas equipment and challenges with electric industrial laundry technology. PCE engaged with representatives from various biotech companies to understand the challenges of new all-electric biotech buildings. PCE concluded that it is feasible to require all-electric new construction of biotech buildings. Thus, there's no exception language for biotech in the model ordinance. Because of feedback received from the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, staff recommend revising the model ordinance to include language similar to the City of San Carlos's current REACH code that allows fossil gas for space conditioning in laboratory areas if there is a third-party verification to demonstrate infeasibility or lack of cost effectiveness with an all-electric pathway. At the July 13th SIC meeting, all commissioners supported the Bay Area REACH Code Model Ordinance, and again, some commissioners supported adding an exemption for space conditioning for buildings with biotech use. Before diving into the EV REACH codes, I want to share some EV terminology. This diagram shows the level of charging, the different levels of charging that we will discuss today. So level 1 is a 120 volt outlet that you find in your home, and level 2 is a 240 volt outlet. This can be seen in either a residential setting, or it can also look like the level 2 chargers that you see in shopping centers. There are also level 3 DC fast chargers. This level of charging is not commonly mandated through REACH codes. In addition to different levels, there are different types of readiness. So EV capable means that there is panel capacity and raceway or conduit, but that circuit or receptacle is not yet installed. EV ready means a space can be readily plugged into with an EV charger. And finally, the code can also require that the space includes supply equipment so that the driver does not have to bring their own equipment. Installing EV infrastructure in new construction is significantly cost-saving compared to retrofitting existing buildings. PCE authorized a study to compare the new construction and retrofit costs. They found that retrofitting to install EV infrastructure costs 3 to 4 times more than installing at the time of new construction. And that's because retrofitting can require costly trenching, wiring, and electrical work. This slide shows Table 2 from the staff report summarizing staff's recommendation for the adoption of the Bay Area REACH Code's model code that requires enhanced EV infrastructure requirements for every building type. For multifamily and non-residential buildings, these requirements are a significant increase above our current REACH Code requirements. But I want to stress the importance of EV charging access to increase EV adoption and reduce emissions in our community. At the April 13th Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission meeting, all commissioners supported the Bay Area REACH Code Model Ordinance. Commissioners emphasized the importance of using the model code for consistency across the region. Some commissioners expressed concern about relying on level 1 charging in multifamily and recommended requiring level 2 charging because of the charging speed. In July 2022, the Bay Area REACH Code Model Ordinance was updated to include an alternative option. So there's 2 options now for multifamily, which require level 2 low power instead of level 1. PCE staff drafted this alternate REACH code after receiving feedback from different cities expressing preference for level 2 over level 1, and the SIC did not have an opportunity to provide feedback on option B. Staff reached out to other cities and found varied proposed requirements for new multifamily construction for the next code cycle. Both REACH code options ensure 100% of residences have access to EV charging. However, option B allows for a faster charge compared to option A. I want to provide a little bit more background on the use of level 1 charging. According to the California Air Resources Board, in one of their studies, 50% of EV drivers use level 1 charging. PCE assessed EV charging needs for multifamily properties and found that in residential settings, cars are parked for more than 12 hours. So given that the average commute of a Bay Area resident is between 25 and 35 miles per day, charging needs can often be satisfied with the level 1 charger, which would avoid additional costs for faster charging infrastructure. PCE analyzed a 100-dwelling multifamily building and found that option A cost $195,000 compared to option B, which costs $225,000. So note that the EV infrastructure costs to comply with the REACH codes account for 0.3% or as much as 0.5% of the total construction costs. So staff does not have a recommendation between the two REACH code options for multifamily and seeks City Council feedback and direction.
Was that 0.25% of the total construction cost?
0.3, yeah.
0.3, okay.
And those were all of the proposed REACH codes for new construction. So I will move on to proposed REACH codes for existing buildings. Currently, the city does not have any REACH codes in place for existing buildings. In February 2022, staff began collaborating with PCE to explore REACH code options that would be effective during the upcoming building code and potentially adopted in tandem with the new construction REACH codes. PCE provided technical support to the city in the drafting and development of the proposed REACH code options. These proposed measures are all enforced at a time of permit application and issuance. They are triggered when someone is coming into the city to get a permit for a project, and the measures all focus on reducing the use of fossil gas and encouraging building electrification. Some of these measures will require heat pump technology. Very simply, heat pumps use electricity to transfer heat from a cool space to a warm space, much like a refrigerator. They are electric and they are highly efficient, 4 times their gas equivalent. And though they aren't as common here in our region, they are proven technology, and over 12 million homes heat their homes with heat pumps in the US. Heat pumps are used in both water heating and space heating. So decarbonizing existing building stock is key to reaching our city's ambitious climate goals. When developing REACH codes for existing buildings, the city must consider a variety of factors. So in terms of GHG emission reduction, the city of San Mateo is mostly built out, and we know that new construction accounts for a small percentage of development. So we know we had to look at REACH codes for existing buildings. Once I go through the proposed measures, you will see how staff prioritized focusing on space conditioning and water heating, the major uses of fossil gas in a typical residence. We also looked at best practices in other cities. Requiring electrification through REACH codes is a relatively new approach, and only a few California cities have REACH code requirements for electrification in home renovations. It is also important to consider potential challenges with enforcement. Staff are mindful of the importance of the building permit issuance and building inspection process to ensure the health and safety of the community. We rely on this permitting process to ensure gas and electric equipment are installed safely. If REACH codes impose restrictions that community members or contractors find too challenging or too costly to comply with, this might result in improvements being done without permits. And then finally, staff also evaluated the cost to the property owner and the equity impacts of the policy. Requiring electric equipment may increase upfront project costs and may also have a long-term impact on operational and utility costs. Upfront costs to convert to new technology and electric equipment is often the primary barrier for electrification in underserved communities, and someone who faces energy insecurity or the inability to pay for energy bills without a significant trade-off is not able to prioritize electrification. The city will need to be thoughtful about REACH code requirements to prevent negative impacts to underserved communities. And additionally, there's a very high cost of living in San Mateo, and homeowners of varying income levels are challenged with housing costs, and also might lack the discretionary income for increased costs of equipment replacement and ongoing increases on monthly utility bills. Throughout my presentation, I will share the costs associated with each of the REACH codes compared to if these policies were not in place. Okay. REACH code option 1, panel capacity for future electrification, is triggered by the upgrade or installation of a new electric panel, and it requires the reservation of breaker space and panel capacity for future electric equipment. Electrical capacity is key to future electrification of building systems, and so by requiring the reservation of breaker space, when a building owner is already making changes to their electrical panel, gas equipment can more easily be converted to electric in the future. The City of Piedmont adopted this approach, and their REACH code went into effect last year. Piedmont staff noted that project applicants are typically able to allot panel capacity and breaker space within the panel that they were planning to upgrade to. So staff estimates this measure would not add additional project costs to someone's project. This is an electric readiness measure that prepares the project owner for future electrification. We looked at some permit data, and over the past 5 years, there was an average of 192 permits per year for electrical panel upgrades. So I want to be clear that these measures are all triggered when a property owner is coming to the city with a project in mind. So this measure comes into play when someone is already planning to upgrade or replace their electrical panel. This is commonly done in tandem with solar installations and EV chargers and even home remodels. REACH Code Option 2 requires the installation of electrical outlets at the time of kitchen or laundry room renovations if a gas appliance is installed. This means at least one outlet capable of serving electric equipment is located near the kitchen stove or laundry clothes dryer during a laundry room renovation. The City of Piedmont also adopted this approach last year. This measure aligns with the 2022 state code update that will require pre-wiring in new construction when gas appliances are installed. PC estimates that requiring this requirement would cost $500 to as much as $2,000 to the project. So the costs are really varied depending on the location of the panel relative to the location of the renovation in the home. And these cost estimates are really highly sensitive to material availability and inflation. Again, this is an electric readiness requirement that would prepare the property owner for future electrification. Over the past 5 years, there was an average of 98 permits for kitchen renovations and 49 permits for laundry renovations per year. REACH Code Option 3 requires the installation of a heat pump air conditioning unit at the time of an installation of a new AC or replacement of an existing AC in conjunction with a gas furnace replacement. So AC condensing units are electric, but the requirement to install a heat pump system would electrify both the home's space heating and cooling. PC estimates that the installation of an AC condenser unit would cost $17,500, and the installation of a heat pump would cost $19,000. There are incentives available for heat pump systems, but without incentives, the heat pump would cost about $1,500 more for the AC condenser unit. I'm sorry, the heat pump would cost $1,500 more compared to if you were installing an AC condenser unit. If the homeowner is adding new air conditioning to their home, their electricity costs would rise regardless of the equipment type. So the scenario we compared was utility bills of a gas furnace and AC condenser unit compared to a heat pump system. Staff found varied results when looking at studies comparing utility costs for each scenario. One study estimated that homeowners would save $10 per month, while another study estimated homeowners would pay $11 more per month with a heat pump unit. Space heating accounts for 36% of fossil gas use in a typical San Mateo household, representing a significant greenhouse gas emission saving opportunity. And if adopted, the city of San Mateo would be the first city in California to adopt this type of requirement for heat pump air conditioning. The city of Vancouver in British Columbia has such a requirement that is slated to go into effect January 1 of 2023. Over the past 5 years, there was an average of 58 permits for the installation of new or replaced AC units in single-family homes and duplexes per year. Staff does not have specific data regarding the type of HVAC equipment that is installed, but generally staff observed that the majority of HVAC projects do include the installation of a gas furnace with an AC condenser unit. Reach code option 4A would require the installation of electric or solar pool heating equipment when a new heated pool is installed at an existing residential building. If a pool is installed as part of the construction of a new residential building, the pool is already required to use electric equipment, according to the city's current REACH code. One study found that the heat pump pool heater option would cost $800 or as much as $1,300 more compared to the gas pool heater at the time of installation. But the study also found that the property owner would see immediate savings on the utility bills, $105 annually. The city of Santa Monica adopted this REACH code requirement in 2020. Electric pool heating would avoid 83% of emissions compared to the gas pool heating option. And though heat pump pool heaters are not a new technology, they represent a small market share in California. Currently, most California heated pools use natural gas pool heaters. Heat pump pool heaters are more popular in other markets, including Florida. And over the past 5 years, there was an average of 5 permits per year for the installation of new pools at existing residences. Okay, REACH code option 4B, and I should mention you would choose between 4A and 4B and not recommend both. So 4B expands on 4A and would prohibit the extension of fuel gas infrastructure into the backyard of an existing residence. So in effect, it would require electric or solar pool heating, but it would also mean that fossil gas infrastructure could not be extended for the use of grills and fire pits. It would still allow property owners to use other types of fuel sources for grills and fire pits, such as propane or electricity. This requirement would prevent investment in the extension of fossil gas infrastructure, a costly project. The city of Palo Alto is considering adoption of this REACH code option. Over the past 5 years, there was an average of 10 permits per year for new gas fire pits and grills. REACH code option 5 would require the installation of a heat pump water heater if a water heater was being replaced as part of an addition or alterations project. This measure would not impact all water heater replacements. Instead, this REACH code intends to impact projects where a water heater is being installed as part of a larger project. The intent would be to impact projects that are not replacing equipment at the time of failure or in emergencies, allowing for the project applicant to have a bit more time to plan for electrification. PCE estimates gas water heaters cost $2,500, and instantaneous gas water heater replacement costs $5,500, and a heat pump water heater installation costs $7,000. So depending on the type of water heater you are replacing, your upfront costs could range from an additional $1,500 or $4,500 more than the gas unit to go with a heat pump. This figure, again, does not include rebates that are available in our county for heat pump water heaters. Ongoing operational and utility costs are estimated to be about the same as a gas water heater option, or even save you money depending on the efficiency of the equipment. This is another approach that the city of Palo Alto is considering as a REACH code option this year. Staff estimates that this requirement would impact less than 134 projects per year in San Mateo based on the number of permits we've seen issued for water heater replacements. At the July 13th SIC meeting, all commissioners supported adoption of REACH code options 1, 2, 4A, and 4B. Commissioners also supported the adoption of REACH code option 3, with some commissioners emphasizing the specific importance of providing rebates for heat pump systems. And then there was mixed feedback on REACH code option 5, with 2 commissioners voicing support for REACH code option 5 and 2 commissioners expressing concerns about the increased costs of water heater equipment. These next slides will go over the existing building decarbonization ordinance and community feedback on the existing building REACH code options.
Question. 2 expressed concerns over increased cost of what?
2 commissioners expressed concerns about requiring heat pump water heaters at the time of addition and alterations, and they expressed concerns over the cost of the heat pump water heater compared to the gas option.
Just the difference in the cost of the equipment?
Yes.
Okay.
So in July 2022, the Bay Area Reach Codes team published the existing building decarbonization ordinance. The ordinance is not a building amendment, so it is not tied to the building code, and it instead relies on the city's police powers. The decarbonization ordinance contains four main elements. It establishes a date to require electric appliances upon appliance replacement. It requires electric readiness during appliance replacements. It requires fossil fuel disclosure during a sale of property. And then it establishes a date for termination of fuel gas infrastructure. So unlike the new construction reach codes, PCE has stated that the decarbonization ordinance is meant to serve as a menu of regulatory options for jurisdictions to consider. PCE is not recommending that jurisdictions adopt every element. Furthermore, the template contains blanks for cities to specify the effective date of requiring electric appliance replacements for each type of gas equipment, water heaters, furnaces, and so on. To select an appropriate effective date, PCE recommends that cities analyze the gas equipment replacement costs and ongoing utility costs across building types and likely consider nuanced dates depending on the equipment and building type, similar to the analysis that was presented for the proposed reach codes. In addition, PCE recommends that jurisdictions consider the cost of complying with requirements and the availability of resources to achieve code compliance and ensure that the code produces equitable and just outcomes. PCE did not complete this analysis on behalf of cities, and staff has not yet completed this recommended analysis and requires the assistance of technical experts to do so. The advocacy group San Mateo Climate Action Team has petitioned for the immediate adoption of the Decarbonization Ordinance. In their public comment to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, the advocacy group stated January 1, 2026 as the effective date for all appliance replacements to be electric, and recommended January 1, 2030 as the effective date for the termination of gas in the city of San Mateo. In a recent email to City Council, the advocacy group updated their proposal to require all appliance replacements be electric beginning January 1, 2025. As I mentioned, careful evaluation is needed to consider the impact of such a policy on all building types, electric technology, contractor readiness, and the cost to the property owner to determine a meaningful and feasible start date for the policy. Staff does not have a recommendation for or against the advocacy group's proposal, but staff does recommend that technical and legal analysis be completed before council consideration of adoption. In addition, staff recommends doing both community and contractor engagement on this approach. In the immediate term, staff have focused on working with PCE on reach codes to leverage the building code cycle and implement measures that would go into effect January 1, 2023. In line with the City Council's priority to decarbonize existing buildings, staff will develop a strategic roadmap to decarbonize our community and evaluate and establish an end-of-flow target date for the termination of fuel gas infrastructure. Work on this effort is scheduled after staff completes work on the adoption of the proposed reach codes. Staff plans to contract with a technical consultant to evaluate the city's building stock and analyze other building decarbonization approaches. These approaches include financing and rebates for electrification, home energy assessment requirements, commercial energy building performance standards, and possibly pursuing partnerships with agencies such as PCE to implement programs that focus on funding electrification in low-income households. The decarbonization strategy will evaluate the proposed approach recommended by the advocacy group. Since this approach is not tied to the building code, there's no concern about the triennial code cycle update. The decarbonization ordinance will be evaluated with the support of a technical consultant and vetted with the community and stakeholders later this fiscal year, and can be potentially enacted with the advocacy group's proposed timeframes. On August 30th, staff hosted a virtual community meeting where 35 people attended. Staff responded to questions about reach codes and used the Zoom poll feature to collect feedback at the end of the meeting. Overall, most poll respondents expressed strong support for adoption of all 5 of the reach code options. Most poll respondents thought reach code options do not go far enough, while 25% of poll respondents thought the reach code options help reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and 15% thought reach code's options actually go too far. So most comments, both during the meeting and emailed directly to staff, expressed strong support for the advocacy group's approach. Staff launched an online survey to allow community members to provide feedback at their convenience. This survey was opened August 31st and through September 13th. Survey questions focused on existing building reach codes and aligned with the poll that was launched during the community meeting. Even though it is not a statistically significant survey, it is an important tool to engage the community and those who have an interest in this topic but are unable to attend public meetings. There were 98 community members who responded to the survey. These next few slides highlight survey results and show mixed levels of support and opposition for the proposed reach codes. So when asked if you support reach code option 1, there was 69% of respondents who said strongly or somewhat supported the approach, 6% neutral, 24% opposed. For reach code option 2, 61% support, 5% neutral, 34% opposed. Reach code option 3, which is the heat pump AC, 57% support, 7% neutral, and 36% opposed. Option 4A received more support compared to option 4B. So option 4A had 77% support, 9% neutral, 14% opposed. Reach code option 4B, 51% support, 7% neutral, and 42% opposed. And then option number 5 regarding water heaters, 50% support, 8% neutral, and 42% opposed. Most respondents are somewhat or very concerned about climate change, and most poll respondents live in San Mateo or live and work in San Mateo. So about 90% of respondents are San Mateo residents. And then 91% of respondents own their own home. And according to the survey, 24% of respondents think these reach code options do not go far enough. 32% think they help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. 35% think these reach codes go too far, and 8% of respondents replied that they were not sure. So decarbonization is a priority at the regional, state, and federal levels. The Bay Area Air Quality Management District regulates gas furnaces and water heaters, and their draft rules would actually prohibit the sale and installation of different gas equipment. So they plan to prohibit the sale and installation of residential gas water heaters in January 1, 2027, residential and commercial gas furnaces, January 1, 2029, and commercial gas water heaters and boilers, January 1, 2031. The California Air Resources Board also has a recommendation in their climate change scoping plan for 100% of appliance sales to be electric by 2035. And in August 2022, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law, providing direct financial support for electrification. So it established a tax credit for heat pump space heaters and heat pump water heaters, a maximum $2,000 per household per year. And the IRA also includes a rebate program of up to $14,000 per household that will be administered at the state level. And it will take time for the state to develop and administer this new rebate program, so funding is not immediately available. But Peninsula Clean Energy has announced new incentives for heat pumps, including $3,500 for heat pump space heaters and $3,000 for heat pump water heaters. These incentives will be available before January 1, 2023. All of this rebate and incentive funding will help make electrification more cost-effective for San Mateo property owners. And these regional and state and federal actions also provide helpful context as the city evaluates reach codes and decarbonization policies into the future. Okay, so in April and July, staff presented reach code information to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission. In August, staff focused on community outreach. In September, we're here. This is our study session tonight with City Council to ask for feedback direction on the reach code options. For next steps, it is critical that new construction reach codes be adopted by the end of the year to prevent a lapse in the city's current requirements. REACH codes can be adopted at any time. However, it is optimal for a REACH code to be adopted at the beginning of a code cycle to maximize the amount of time the policy is in place. Addressing electrification in existing buildings is new for San Mateo, and developing thoughtful policies for existing buildings is very complex. So REACH codes for existing buildings could potentially be adopted separately from new construction REACH codes. Staff will incorporate City Council feedback before returning to City Council for REACH code ordinance introduction in October, and proposed REACH codes would go into effect with the 2022 building code. Again, that's on January 1, 2023. So staff seeks feedback and direction on REACH codes for all electric requirements and EV charging infrastructure in new construction. Additionally, staff seeks feedback and direction on the existing buildings' REACH code options and the decarbonization strategy. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Goethals.
Wow. That was amazing. Having spoken to you about this offline multiple times, I know all of the things that went into that and how hard you've been working, and I wish there were 5 of you. It sounds like from what you've presented to us, the need is there. Everyone seems to agree on the safety to neighborhoods, the climate change issues, forest fires. We're trying to do a good thing here. We've already adopted the goal, and it's part of our strategic goals. So the question is, in the short term, we're looking at these REACH codes for between now and how far out can we pass REACH codes? 2 years or 3 years or?
We can amend the building code, which runs from January 1, 2023 to December 31, 2025.
Okay. And you have worked extraordinarily hard to work on all of the things that you have presented to us, 1, 2, 3, 4A, 4B, and 5. And the process that those things have gone through includes the outreach and going to the commission and all of those things. And it sounds like the advocates are asking for over and above that, things that haven't necessarily gone to the commission and things that haven't gone through the kind of outreach and process that you've been working on this. Is that right?
That's correct. The decarbonization ordinance, again, it's a blank template, so the city would have to analyze and select dates for the effective date of the policy, and that has not been vetted with the commission or the community.
It also sounds like we're pushing PCE to do this at the same time. We're doing it in collaboration with them. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they've been extremely supportive of the city's efforts in drafting building amendments that would meet our needs.
So what would it take for us, for the staff, to do the kind of collaboration with PCE and the kind of outreach to the community to meet a 2025 deadline? Is that even possible? Are we capable of that kind of outreach, that process?
So I mentioned before that REACH codes are tied to the building code cycle, and that's why I've been very focused on leveraging the triennial code cycle. The decarbonization ordinance is not tied to the building code, so it can really be adopted at any time. And as I spoke about with the decarbonization strategy, it is one of the approaches that will be evaluated with a technical consultant and required some community outreach and stakeholder engagement to finalize, because again, it's a template with a lot of blank spaces for city staff to evaluate and fill in.
Can I clarify, Joe, a little bit? The
Sure.
2025 deadline is to allow only installation of electric devices, correct?
That's what I am understanding.
Yeah.
My understanding of the advocacy group's proposal is they want to require every single replacement of gas equipment be electric starting January 1, 2025.
Thank you.
And what I believe you just said was that we could pass 1 through 5 tonight and engage in the stakeholder engagement and collaborative process with PCE, and still meet the deadline of passing an ordinance that did effectively eliminate new fossil fuel appliances before 2025. Is that right?
Correct.
So if the council directed you to do that tonight, you could start that process.
Correct.
That's all I have for right now.
Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Andrea. Excellent work. I have a couple specific questions. So regarding the options for EV charging infrastructure, I was wondering, I heard you say that there's a difference in cost installation. For installation, it's $195K versus $225.
Right.
Right? And that represents 0.3 to 0.5% of total cost. But we also talked about sort of the cost of conversion, and I was wondering, do you know if if we're factoring in projected capacity needs and future conversion costs, if those would be significant, as we know with the retrofitting costs being significant? I'm wondering if that's a comparable comparison.
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding what you're referring to when you're saying conversion.
Oh, so for example, like the EV charging infrastructure. So if we were to choose option A or versus option B, right? If we were going to prioritize level 2 versus level 1, and we wanted to have more increased faster capacity later on, would that represent a conversion cost that we should be factoring in this conversation?
My understanding, if you have some electric vehicle readiness infrastructure installed, as in like panel capacity and conduit and raceway already, yeah, you are better set up for converting to higher power in the future.
So that would be option A or B?
So both option A and B provide EV charging infrastructure to 100% of residences. Option B does allow for EV drivers to receive a faster charge because it's that level 2 ready, low power in comparison to level 1. So it's faster. And that's the main difference between option B and option A. And then you mentioned that there is an increased cost with option A compared to option B compared to option A because of that faster charge.
Right. And so and we're in the weeds, right? But recognizing that we're in the weeds, I guess my question is, when we're thinking about sort of the lifetime capacity that we want all of our buildings to provide, and hopefully the increased number of use, and option B as an upfront cost could possibly have better longevity. So it's a higher upfront cost, but over the lifetime it provides better service, like factoring in that there's going to be more electric vehicles on the road and higher demand.
It definitely provides a...
If I could just dovetail on that and add to your question, if more people living in multifamily residences have electric charged vehicles, and they may have to tap in and use it just as much. In other words, in a 12-hour cycle, we might be able to get 2 cars charged instead of 1 because they're going to go so quickly. There might be an advantage to using B instead of A, even though there's a little more money. Were you sort of getting at that as well?
Same, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. So I think we're clear on option A.
So let me clarify one more
yeah.
thing, because I just heard for the second time. First you mentioned, and then you mentioned 12-hour cycle. 12-hour cycle includes charging during the time of use prime time hour, which ends at 9 p.m. So I think the actual real cycle we want to be charging on starts after 9 p.m. and probably ends by 6 a.m., right? Because people are up and gone to work before 9 a.m. You're not giving full 12 hours, okay? So I think the cycle is more like 9 hours. Anyway,
Nonetheless, you get increased capacity because you can get 2 cars done in 12 hours, whichever time period that may be, rather than 1 car.
You get what you get is a faster charge for each of the vehicles.
Right, so faster charge meaning that you're plugged in a shorter amount of time,
Shorter-
and
you're plugged in a shorter
theoretically,
amount.
then that would allow for more cars to then utilize it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so
So you're saying-
we're all talking about
You're
the same
talking about
thing.
option B,
I'm
right?
talking about option B, the advantages of option B.
Yes.
Both scenarios ensure, though, that everyone at least has an access to a plug.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can double up. I mean, I think what you're suggesting is it may be a little bit more money on the front end, but it might make the building more flexible to its residents in the end run. Okay, sorry.
Well said, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So then I guess the other piece that I wanted to ask about is if we have, for example, a standard of cost recovery that we can, as a city, think about as policymakers. So when I was doing some, envelope calculations here on the upfront cost, for example, I'm moving into the proposed reach codes for existing buildings. So for example, the upfront cost for, say, a heat pump, air conditioning would be an additional, I think you said $1,500, right? But a savings of $10 to $11 per month.
I found in the studies had mixed results. So there are studies that say you would save $10 per month, but I found another study that would that the heat pump option would actually increase your electrical bill to $11. So there's a range.
Okay, so range. Okay. Okay, so then maybe that's not a good example. We can talk about.
I think you actually need a crystal ball for that because that's between PG&E and the CPUC. So the rates are determined largely out of the public's control.
Okay, but I think for the purposes of us understanding where we are and the funding that's becoming available imminently, right? That some of these calculations or some of these costs as presented don't actually factor in the true costs that the majority of San Mateans that were to avail themselves of these benefits would actually receive, which would significantly lower those costs.
The figures I showed you did not include incentive funding. I don't want to assume that every resident receives that incentive funding, but I would hope that they would take advantage. But yeah, the measures all compared or showed the costs without those rebates.
Right, and so I guess reading the room or the community in terms of the feedback from community was a high sensitivity to cost, right? And so I think that as we surface these numbers, better understanding how rebates would offset costs and potential costs or lowering ongoing costs for bills, for example, could actually result in a net neutral investment. And so I think, I don't want to overstate that if that's not true, but it seems to me that we want to be having conversations with realistic numbers, knowing that there's significant resources available to residents and that we don't want to create policies that are going to become exorbitant cost burdens.
Absolutely. That is why I try to be very transparent with the cost estimates that PCE helped me find to understand the cost impacts of these measures. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, rebates will help offset the cost delta between this reach code requirement not being in place and it being in place.
Right. And so, yeah.
I think what you're trying to say is they're fluid, and they will be fluid as we go forward, but they're out there.
Yeah, I wanted to be clear about the rebate funding that is available currently. One thing to note about rebate funding is that we don't hold those funds, right? So they can be used up, right? And we saw that happen recently, actually this year, where there was tech incentive funding for heat pump air conditioning systems that was all used up and has not yet been refunded. But it's hopefully going to still be refunded this year.
So for example, if we were to explore a all electric requirement in, say, January 1st, 2025, could we, say, make that conditional on some of those funding options being in place?
there's lots of iterations and things we could explore for 2025. I think.
Okay, so I mean, I think it's important to explore kind of like or to tie a goal like that to feasibility and available
Sure.
funds, and also, some of the call-outs that the advocates have made is a hardship clause, right? And so, better understanding how that could be implemented.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's definitely a useful approach. I will stress that the reach code options that are in front of you for existing buildings start January 1, 2023, so in 4 months. And this list was put together based on the cost effectiveness and cost analysis that was available now. So what is cost effective now? So the analysis for what is cost effective in 2025, I don't have that for you right now.
Okay, but there's theoretically nothing stopping us from designing a aspirational goal of setting a sort of putting our our foot in the sand, or a marker in the sand, but with some qualifications about funding availability. Yes, okay, that's helpful to know. And I guess I would be interested to kind of bring PCE into this conversation a little bit to get some of their expertise and feedback about, where being market experts, I think that you did a great job of laying out some of the constraints that we have right now. For example, like the limited number of contractors, or some of the manufacturing limitations, or, some of these pilot programs that haven't scaled to, a sizable capacity. And then, but I think that PCE can speak to the sort of the trajectory of where we hope to be in a couple of years, given their knowledge of the space and industry, and just kind of get a read from them in terms of what the advantage of being more aspirational could be, or how feasible it is.
Do you want Blake to jump on right now?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm saying.
Hello, thank you for asking that. On the technical feasibility side of things,
Who are we
building
hearing
all
from?
electric buildings.
Blake, I think.
Can you hear me all right?
Who are we hearing from right now?
Oh, sorry. This is Blake Hersheff with Peninsula Clean Energy.
Thank you.
Sure. Apologies for that. I'm the Building Electrifications Programs Manager. As far as we do expect many more rebates to come online in the coming years. Obviously, the incentives from the federal government will be coming online over the next couple of years. And the rebate is going to be available on January 1st. That's the $2,000 tax credit. We're also expecting more funding from the state over the next couple of years to help offset costs. The state has a goal of installing 6 million heat pumps by 2030. And is working to help incentivize those. As far as technical capability, it is all the measures that we've included are definitely possible to install today with available technology today. Any more specific questions?
No, I think that's good. Thank you, Blake.
Sure.
And then I guess my other question is in terms of, I think our council has done a great job in prioritizing equity, and my neighborhood of North Central has the highest rate of pollution burden in the entire city. So just to name a few: highest risk of exposure to lead in homes, highest traffic impacts, groundwater threats, and hazardous waste. So I just wanted to get some more input in terms of what the potential focus on bringing resources through partnerships with, for example, Block Power or PCE could offer in terms of prioritizing our efforts to meet the needs of low-income households.
Yeah, on my decarbonization strategy side, I talked about how there are so many efforts that we need to take on outside of REACH codes. Like REACH codes is one step towards decarbonizing our existing building stock, but we'll need a lot of other types of programming. And so we've seen unique partnerships pop up between like the city of Menlo Park and the city of San Jose with an organization called Block Power, for example, that works on implementing electrification in homes. And so that could be a focus of staff to specifically target low-income households in San Mateo to ensure they're prioritized for electrification.
And would that be something that we fold into the adoption of these REACH codes? Is that, I mean, I guess I don't totally understand where a strategy like that or prioritizing a strategy around equity fits into our current decision-making tree.
So I'm looking for feedback and direction specifically on the REACH codes that I had up on the slide, but I'm also looking for your general feedback of what I'm calling our decarbonization strategy, which it will include a suite of different efforts. And so I think that exact feedback is helpful to direct staff where to focus.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Next.
Just to follow on that real quickly, and we could take into account seniors and whatnot as well when we're looking at who
Right.
might be more entitled or where the equity equation comes in.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just, people have been in their homes a long time and it might be difficult to do the upgrade, so I wanted to make sure that seniors are, as we go forward, are considered.
Thank you very much. Nothing for Councilmember Rodriguez. And I think you really covered the questions very well, and I'm glad we got a couple clarifications along the way. Thank both of you for all of that. Thank you, Andrea. I think we're now going to go to public comment. Mr. Deputy Clerk, can you tell us how many people do you have here present to speak?
Yes, Mayor, we have 20 public requests to speak in chambers, and currently we have 11.
So 31 altogether. Yeah, so I think we're going to go with 2 minutes for public comment on this.
Okay.
Since, what is the time right now? 6:30. Oh, yeah, we won't get it done. I hate to go with less. Can we go for a minute and a half? I actually think we need to go to 1 minute because we need to have council comments after. So, 1 minute. And we will go over time most likely, but we'll just have to live with that.
As they say, you don't have to use the entire minute.
All right, our first speaker in chambers is John Mckenna. John Mckenna, if you could please come to the dais.
Please say your name again.
John Mckenna,
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of my 8-year-old daughter, the world's youth, future generations, and all life on our one and only planet Earth. I'm here to give you the support that you deserve to transform your community in a very positive way. We are facing one of the greatest challenges of our lifetime. As a result of human-caused global warming, climate change is upon us. The devastating effects can be seen and felt everywhere. There's no need to go into the details, as the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather events are obvious. We know what to do. Stop burning fossil fuels and emitting greenhouse gases. Decarbonizing existing buildings is one way that San Mateo can greatly reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. Thus, I ask you to please adopt the full model REACH code for existing buildings. Such a code should, 1, require that permitted replacements of gas-powered appliances be electric starting in 2025. 2, phase out gas infrastructure by 2030. And 3, include appropriate exemptions for economic hardship or technical infeasibility. There will be challenges, but decarbonizing our existing buildings in this timeframe is achievable, and there are many co-benefits of doing so: health, environmental justice, and jobs, to name a few. Should council seize this opportunity, I can say with tremendous confidence, history will look
Mr.
fondly
Mckenna.
on you for taking San Mateo on this
Sorry,
courageous
Mr.
path
Mckenna.
towards real climate action.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Pete Paffreth.
Mr. Mayor and council members, Pete Paffreth, longtime San Mateo resident, 47 years, raised our kids here. I think that moving forward with this electrification project would be a great idea. So thank you very much for all the work that you've done.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Harry Moody.
Thank you very much. I'm Harry Moody. I live at 10 Scenic Way. I've lived here only 2 years. I moved to San Mateo to be near our 2 granddaughters, and I worry about them. So my basic message to you is take small steps. These are small steps, but they're necessary steps. I spent nearly 10 years in Washington as vice president for AARP, and in one of those years was working on the Affordable Care Act. We were successful in passing that law. It didn't change the entire healthcare system, but it made some incremental steps that made things available to lots of people. I'm 77 years old now myself. I don't have a lot of needs. I'm not going to live that long, but my grandchildren are going to live, and I want them to live in a world that's safe. You can take a few small steps, and that's what it means to electrify everything. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Could you give me your name again, please? Sorry, I missed it.
My name is Harry Moody, 10 Scenic Way here in San Mateo.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mike Caggiano, who will be followed by Michelle Hudson and Robert Whitehair.
Mike Caggiano, you guys have gotten old in 2 years. I haven't seen you 2 years. Now, I haven't changed at all, but sorry. Actually, I'm living the situation you're dealing with. We're a 60-year-old building, 33 units. We've had dealings with Michael Martin, one of your people, and we have 3 options we'll be dealing with on the 29th for level 1 chargers. Without any additional service to our building, we'll have 24, even though we have 33 units, so we'll have to see how that plays out. As far as going with the higher charging element and getting more cars involved, doesn't go to work that way because everything is deeded. So you're going to have people fighting, and there are no spare space for community chargers in most older buildings. So basically, you're looking at what you can provide for that particular unit for what price, So, big question I have is twice now I dealt with PG&E, and they told me they will supply us to the meter free of charge, whatever we need. Is that true at all? Because that's an important
Maybe we
point.
could ask Blake Hirschcraft if he knows anything about that. 1 second, Mike.
Yeah, because what he
Blake,
told me
Blake,
was...
are you available to respond to that question?
Yes, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry about that.
Mr. Caggiano says that PG&E has told him that while they're doing their project adding EV chargers, I think level 1 chargers, that PG&E said, no problem, we'll provide whatever energy you need to increase the load. Is that sound like an accurate?
To the meter.
To the meter, right.
Yes, that's correct. That's actually a new rule. The PG&E has to cover the cost for electric vehicle infrastructure to the meter for additional requests.
Well, that's a really big point. You guys should get that word out, because I told the guy on the phone, I said, I need this in writing.
Mr. Caggiano, I think we're going over time
Yeah,
now.
I'm sorry.
Thank
Okay,
you.
but I've got a lot more to share, but
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hudson, followed by Robert Whitehair and Susan Blockstein.
Mayor Bonilla and members of City Council, thank you for your climate leadership and for taking up this important issue. My name is Michelle Hudson. I'm a longtime resident of San Mateo, mother of 2 kids, and co-leader of the San Mateo Climate Action Team. The San Mateo Climate Action Team is presenting to you this petition signed by over 400 San Mateo residents, business owners, students, and other local residents. I'm unable to read the whole thing due to major time constraints, but among the most important items, the petition asks the city to adopt an ordinance now that requires all replacements of gas equipment in homes and businesses be electric or zero emissions models beginning January 1st, 2025. The petition also asks that an ordinance be coupled with strong support programs, including lining up necessary funding and financing, which was just made so easy by the Inflation Reduction Act. Please heed the call of the San Mateo community. Please adopt the measures staff have proposed for existing buildings and the additional measures that we call for in our petition for San Mateo Climate Action. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Robert Whitehair, followed by Susan Blockstein and Megan Strain.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for taking up this difficult issue. It's all about timing for the San Mateo Climate Action Team. We're out of time in the planet. We can't wait till 2025 to start this process. We need to start with an ordinance today, and that's what we're asking for. We're asking that the council ask staff for preparation of a REACH code for existing buildings that has an effective date of January 1st, 2025, and focuses on permitted replacements. And that'd be, in our city, that would be primarily gas water heaters and gas furnaces. For all those folks who get a permit for gas water heaters and furnaces, they cannot replace with gas. They have to replace with electric. If you wait till 2025 to start this process, we lose 2, 3, or 4 years due to all the things in the timing here in the city. We do recommend you remove the reference to sale of property. We recommend you remove the electric-ready alternative, move towards termination of fossil gas, include exemptions and feasibility waivers, and take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Blockstein, followed by Megan Strain and Libby Traubman.
Good evening.
Can you pull the microphone down so we can hear you a little better? Thank you.
Thank you for taking up this important issue and giving me time to speak. I'm a longtime resident of San Mateo, and I am a member of the San Mateo Climate Action Team. I urge the City Council to take immediate steps to stop the climate crisis. San Mateo has the opportunity to be a leader by implementing the full REACH code, by planning and implementing things that say we want to stop electricity in require electric appliances by 2025. By implementing that now, it gives us the time to plan and find the funding and take advantage of it, get contractors ready, and do all the things so that on January 2025, we'll be ready to go. I also want to point out that by installing heat pumps, which require both heating and cooling, the city has an opportunity to not only reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also to provide a healthier home. Right now, things are getting hotter and hotter, and people never thought that they were going to need air conditioning in San Mateo, but now they do. And so by adding in heat pumps that give us cooling, it will also help people's health. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Megan Strain, followed by Libby Traubman and Ricky McLashin.
Honorable Mayor and council members, I am a San Mateo resident, and I thank you for thoughtfully taking up the issue of electrification today. All of us in this room have already witnessed prolonged drought, extreme heat, and natural disasters, climate disasters like wildfires. I'm 27, and I'm very afraid of what's going to happen to my generation, but I'm also totally terrified to bring children into this world that's totally threatened by climate crisis. But we're in a unique position compared to other times in the world. We know that there's this climate crisis. We know that our actions have huge impact on it, and we also have the technology and the financial means through the IRA to make a difference and take action like never before. And so I urge the City Council to take advantage of this unique position. Please direct staff to prepare a full model REACH code for existing buildings, including requiring all permitted replacement of gas equipment be electric 2025 and laying a foundation for the end of gas flow by 2023. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Libby Traubman, followed by Ricky McLashin and Susan Rowinski.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, thank you so much. I too am a longtime resident of San Mateo, 45 plus years. And as you've already heard, we were living in very challenging times, especially facing the trying to get ready for the ongoing climate crisis. And I suspect and support that the San Mateo County Action Team, and I'm also a member of Elders Action Network, and we work really hard to make sure that there's going to be a future for our grandchildren. And there's no guarantee for that, as we know. But San Mateo can be part of the solution, beginning by adopting the REACH code for electrifying the existing buildings, and in addition to reach codes for all new construction. A huge model for this could be the Hillsdale Mall that's underway now and should be modeling this for the future. So thank you for giving these important messages your valuable time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ricky McGlashan, followed by Susan Rowinski and Belinda.
Hi, I am always proud when San Mateo pushes ahead on housing and equity issues, and the issue now that's most compelling is, of course, climate change. Solutions that are compelling and obvious, we need to implement now. We have used up any time to look into things. The proposed more stringent REACH codes are among these solutions, and eliminating methane gas is a high priority. The house next door to ours just went through an unbelievable renovation, down to the foundation and down to the studs. And the person who owned it before he sold it put in gas lines to everything. And then the new owners bought it and took out gas lines and put in electricity to run their dryer and everything else because they knew it was the right thing to do. And I think this city council knows it's the right thing to do too. So I hope you require it for all new construction in every way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susan Rowinski, followed by Belinda and Anjali Mishra.
Yeah. Hi, good evening. My name is Susan Rowinski. While I'm a commissioner on the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, my comments do not reflect the commission. They reflect me as a private resident who's been living in the city for 23 years. First off, I want to open up and say I am not anti-all-electric transition. However, I am concerned if the transition to electrification it gets too expensive for existing homes, that residents will, one, not pull permits and do illegal work, two, not do it at all, or three, possibly go with space heaters or space coolers for individual rooms. And I think we have to be sensitive to that. As such, I do support and continue to support staff's recommendation for REACH codes that were presented to you tonight, options 1 through 5, and particularly for options 3 and 5, that support is, from my end, assuming that rebates are available to offset those costs, once again, for options 3 and 5. So once again, staff's proposal encourages residents to continue to use our permit process, and then just as important, signals to everyone, I see Rick, that we are now on the road to electrification.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Belinda Schlabler.
Thank you for taking on this very serious, urgent issue. My name is Belinda Klober, and I'm a longtime resident of San Mateo for 30 years. And I urge you to take this very, very seriously because we just went through an electrification process, and I wanted to say most existing homes and businesses have aging gas infrastructure that is increasingly affecting indoor air quality and releases methane gas into the atmosphere. We have an older home, and while transitioning to all electric, we found we had small gas leaks in several areas of our home. PG&E came out and sealed them, but was unable to seal one that was in the wall. Both PG&E and the plumber said it is quite common to have small gas leaks in older homes. Thankfully, we have been able to have the gas completely turned off because of our whole house electrification. Methane is one of the most potent greenhouse gases and greatly contributes to our climate crisis. In transitioning to all electric, we will also save the cost of repairing an aging and obsolete gas infrastructure.
That's time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Anjali Mishra, followed by Charlotte Stewart and Nancy Schneider.
Please say your name again.
Hello, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Anjali. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a high school student in San Mateo. As a young person, myself and my generation are the people that will have to live with the consequences of climate change. And with the date of 2030, which is when climate change will be irreversible, is nearing quickly, it's of the utmost importance that we act swiftly. I'm here today after my school day because I want the council to know that the advocates proposing the model REACH codes have not just been adults, but students like me as well. We have shown up at study sessions and city council meetings and explained why San Mateo taking strong climate action is so important to us. If you look at over 400 people that have signed the San Mateo Climate Action Team petition, you will see that many of them are students just like me in San Mateo. You've already made an ambitious objective for decarbonization, but this model code would be a great step forward for climate action in San Mateo. You made that promise to your constituents, and now it's time you actually pass a policy to keep it. I understand that it might feel scary to pass something so strong, but if you don't take action now, when will you? Delaying does nothing. I encourage you to listen to the youth and to save our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlotte Stewart, followed by Nancy Schneider and Michelle Mandel.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Stewart. Mayor and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Charlotte, and I'm a high school sophomore in San Mateo. I'm here today to talk to you about futures. As a student, I work hard every day in hopes of a bright future, a future that I grow more and more worried about every day in the face of the ever-growing climate emergency. For my generation, the climate emergency is a harsh reality that our futures will be shaped around. It is my generation who will have to deal with its functionally irreversible effects, my generation who will have to live through the impacts if we fail to meet the date of 2030, the date when climate change will become irreversible. It is not the elder generation, not our parents, but my generation, the youth right now, that will have to live with climate change's catastrophic consequences. We are terrified with what our future looks like, and we have put our trust in people like you to help us. For the futures of myself and young people like me, please pass these REACH codes, and San Mateo needs to do what we can to save our planet before climate change becomes irreversible. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Nancy Schneider, followed by Michelle Mandel and Mike Abkin.
Hello. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important topic and for all that you all do for the city of San Mateo. I'm Nancy Schneider. I have lived in San Mateo for over 27 years. I'm a member of the San Mateo Climate Action Team and am very concerned about the threat of climate crisis is to us and to our planet. I support the staff recommendations for the REACH code for new buildings and EV charging. However, I'm asking you to go beyond what the staff is proposing for existing buildings, which are most of the buildings within San Mateo. According to the staff presentation, 55% of the methane gas used in homes is for water heating, and an additional 36% is used for space heating. The REACH codes for existing buildings should address these uses explicitly and require electrification of these appliances at replacement. So I'm asking you, the City Council, to direct staff to prepare an ordinance or set of REACH codes for existing buildings that would include the 4 items suggested by the San Mateo Climate Action Team, with the addition of providing technical assistance and education to our residents and businesses to ensure that they understand the needs for these changes and ensure they get the subsidies and tax credits they're entitled to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Mandel, followed by Mike Abkin and Louise Carr.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Michelle Mandel. I've lived in San Mateo for 15 years. My kids and I love spending time in our local parks. I want our children to enjoy these beautiful places in the future. Climate change is one of the things that keeps me up at night. That's why I'm here tonight, and that's why I'm part of the Climate Action Team. We are all aware of the urgent climate crisis we're in and the importance of reducing the use of methane gas. However, one thing that most people are not aware of is that methane used to heat and cook in our kitchens is hazardous to our health. Recent studies out of both UCLA and Harvard have shown that children who grow up in a house with a gas stove have a 42% greater chance of developing asthma. In addition, the gas in our stoves contains at least 21 different pollutants, and these are suspected to cause cancer. Making the switch to an electric or induction stove when our old stoves are ready for replacement is not only good for the environment, but is good for our health.
Michelle, that's time, but thank
Okay,
you for making
thank
that
you.
new point. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mike Abkin, followed by Louise Carr.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Mike Abkin. I live in Hillsborough, but I'm a former resident of San Mateo. And I'm very encouraged to hear about the REACH codes tonight and all of the plan and the energy behind them by the city. Climate change, climate crisis, and climate emergency I've heard here tonight. I think this is all, they're real and they're accelerating. And to take strong action like implementing the REACH codes, extending them to existing dwellings, existing buildings is really important. And then beyond that, and as I heard tonight from staff, to go beyond that to the further energy going into decarbonization. And the REACH codes will be a beginning and go on to decarbonization. And then there's many other climate change and other issues facing us, and water conservation is another huge one that we got to face, and how we're going to do that too. It's all connected. It's all connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Louise Carr, followed by Pam Riddlemeyer and Alex Wagenfield.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, I have lived in San Mateo. Well, I lived there for 7 years, and I've lived in Hillsborough for 50. And I have been privileged with have fresh air, blue skies, water that we can drink. We're in dire straits. You've heard all this. You know all of this. What I've heard tonight, and I see that cost is a concern. I understand that, especially for people who are going to be paying what is difficult to pay. However, if we're in a situation where our climate is destroying the area, what is our choice? You have the choice here tonight. Money will mean nothing if everything gets destroyed. So, I know things change. I'm old enough to have seen a lot of it. However, you have an opportunity to change to support our climate rather than to destroy it. And that's the main issue that I have here tonight. I want to survive. I want my children to survive. I want my grandchildren to survive. And we're in your hands. You are the ones who make the decisions. Please support San Mateo Climate Action Team and their recommendations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Pam Riddlemeyer, followed by Alex Wagenfield, and Diane Bailey will be our last in-person comment.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I am a resident of San Mateo, and I'm also a contributing author to the IPCC report that came out earlier this year on climate change impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. And I'm here to urge City Council to help residents and businesses take immediate personal steps to mitigate climate change. An increase greater than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels will lead to irreversible damages to our ecosystems, biodiversity, and human health. To limit these impacts, we need to do everything that we can to...
Please proceed. You're okay.
Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. It's the second most abundant greenhouse gas, second to carbon dioxide, but it's actually more potent than carbon dioxide. It's 25% more potent. Luckily, it has a shorter lifespan than carbon dioxide does. But if we can achieve reduction in methane, then that will have a significant effect on our atmospheric warming. There are other environmental impacts from methane other than climate change. It's also the drilling for methane directly impacts the air quality.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alex Wagenfield, followed by Diane Bailey.
Hello, good to see you again. My name is Alex Wagenfeld. I'm 16 years old. I'm a high school student and I live in San Mateo County. I'm here to speak about this proposal in the context of our global climate crisis. According to the Paris Climate Agreement of 2015, world leaders have pledged to have net zero emissions by 2050. Even though this goal is set for 28 years from now, we are already off track. So there are two ways to deal with this. One, we can't find a way to get our act together. We end up moving too slowly and miss our mark. This then triggers a sequence of cascading events that are detrimental to our planet. I don't like that one. Or two, we put actions behind our words and create a sustainable planet. We pass progressive climate policy, like what is being discussed tonight, which not only helps San Mateo, but also inspires other counties to be like us and help save our planet. We don't have time to waste. I like that one. We are the climate leaders. We are building momentum, and we can bring this dream to life. We have the opportunity to get us all back on track. So I ask you, what are we waiting for? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last in-person speaker will be Diane Bailey.
Good evening, Mayor Bonilla and council members, and thanks so much for the opportunity to comment. My name's Diane Bailey. I'm with the Campaign for Fossil-Free Buildings in Silicon Valley. That's a coalition of 39 groups working together to accelerate a phase out of fossil fuels from our homes and buildings. And we stand with the more than 400 people who signed the petition in support of a comprehensive REACH code for new and existing buildings, based on the model codes provided by the Bay Area REACH Codes team. Which did leave blanks for you to fill in. We really appreciate the efforts of city staff and commissioners, but we know in our hearts and we know in our heads that that's just not enough. There's so much more that we need to do, and there's no time for delay. Fortunately, the historic climate bill provided over $360 billion in investments in climate solutions. Residents of the city of San Mateo are entitled to all of these different rebates, incentives, tax credits, and it amounts to around $30,000 or more per household. So that's a lot of funding, and I really encourage you to take advantage of those generous funding and move forward with the existing building REACH code. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that concludes public comment, do we have anything else there?
We have remote speakers. We have 12 Zoom comments.
I'm sorry?
12 comments via Zoom.
12 commenters remaining? Oh, online. Wow, we're significantly over time, but I think we have to go with 1 minute, so let's go. And let me remind you, you do not have to speak for the whole minute. Thank you.
All right, our first speaker will be Elaine Salinger. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, Elaine.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name's Elaine Salinger. I am a member of the San Mateo Climate Action Team. I'm a 33-year resident of San Mateo, retired veterinarian and business owner, the vice president of the San Mateo County BPAC, and co-leader of the San Mateo County chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. And I'm speaking tonight to represent our 200 members who live in the city of San Mateo. And I'm speaking tonight in support of that you vote for the full REACH code with the electrification of existing buildings. The point I want you to consider is that eventually there will be a price on carbon-based energy, because putting a price on carbon is by far the single most effective way to reduce our emissions. And when this happens, green energy will be significantly less expensive, even more so than it is today. So anyone with gas-powered appliances will pay more for their energy until they switch. But renters cannot change their appliances. So if you're interested in economic justice for renters, please make sure that all remodels and replacements for broken gas appliances are electric only, not gas. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So let me remind everybody before we go any farther that we're already 5 minutes late getting our council meeting started at 7 p.m. So please, you do not have to use the whole minute. And Mr. McTaggart, please, no more speakers after the ones that are on right now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Our next speaker will be Zach, followed by Jared Johnson. Zach, please unmute your mic.
Dear Mayor and members of the City Council, my name is Zach Scott. I'm 13 years old and I have lived in San Mateo my entire life. I have been affected by climate change because I have asthma, and wildfire smoke has made my asthma a lot worse in the last several years. Thank you for everything you have done to fight climate change. I urge you now to adopt a REACH code for existing buildings that includes the staff proposed measures and that also requires permitted replacements of gas equipment be electric or zero emissions models effective in several years' time. 2, meets the City Council objective to decarbonize all buildings and infrastructure by 2030. 3, lays the foundation for the end flow of gas in San Mateo and provides exemptions for economic hardship and technical feasibility. Please take these actions while there is still time to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jared Johnson. Jared, please unmute your mic.
Thank you. My name is Johnson. I'm a Bay Area
Set the timer.
Senior Policy Manager for Optera. On behalf of my organization, I first want to thank you for taking up these REACH codes and including existing buildings. However, I urge you to ask the city to adopt in October of 2022 the Bay Area Model Reach Code for existing buildings. It is important to recognize that fossil gas is a fuel of the past and new appliances must be all electric in order for us to decarbonize and protect ourselves from catastrophic climate change. Additionally, folks living in gas-powered units are exposed to higher levels of air pollution. Research shows that children with asthma are particularly affected by air pollution from gas stoves. Children living in areas with high levels of outdoor air pollution and lower income African American and Hispanic children with asthma are most disproportionately burdened by indoor air pollution from gas stoves. Lastly, there will be money made available to electrify homes. At least $14K will be available to low and middle income families due to the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. So I urge this council to pass the full Bay Area Reach Code for new and existing buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Bruce Nagel. Bruce, please unmute your mic.
Set the timer, please. Bruce?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that have been said before, but I think there are a couple of key items that we should key in on. The first is that the funding for doing this work with IRA is substantial, and it's something we all need to look at. In fact, there's even a section of it that applies to the general population in cleanenergy.gov. And I suggest that those who are enthusiastic about bringing their enthusiasm to their personal life look at that. The other thing I want to say is that the comments about children, that is something that I have seen. I've participated in many different city council meetings, and it is the thing that is most outstanding. They're the ones who are going to suffer this. We definitely need to take care of them. We owe them a good planet. The last thing I want to mention is the fact that San Mateo County is probably the most subject to having sea level rise.
That is time. Thank you. Now, let me ask, as we go forward, if you could please just tell us what you support quickly without giving a lot of background. That would really help a lot. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Claire Shinanti. Please unmute your mic.
Hello, my name is Claire Shintani, and I'm a San Mateo resident, born and raised. I'm 18 years old. I've just started my freshman year of college, and I have my first midterm tomorrow morning, but I'm here tonight because this matter means so much to me. First, I'd like to thank you for taking up this issue. If we continue relying on fossil fuels, Earth's temperature will increase dramatically in the next few years, causing irreparable harm to all life. Now, loved ones suffer from asthma attacks caused by wildfire smoke, and severe drought causes food insecurity, but this is just the tip of the iceberg if we don't act. With this in mind, I urge you to direct staff to prepare a full model reach code for existing buildings for consideration at your meeting on October 10th. We have one chance to act, and we need to act now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rebecca Young. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here as a parent of 2 high school students, and I'm deeply concerned about the future we're leaving for our children. San Mateo was the first city in San Mateo County to pass a reach code for new construction, leading the way for neighboring communities, and San Mateo now has the opportunity to take bold climate action and lead the region once again on existing buildings. I support the San Mateo Climate Action Team's petition, and I urge the City Council to be a leader in the Bay Area by adopting a full model reach code for existing buildings. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Gary T., followed by Mary Rose. Gary, please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Dr. Gary Trott. I'm a citizen of San Mateo, and I strongly support the most aggressive reach codes and decarbonization strategies possible. I have 2 quick comments. A lot of discussion on the cost of installation, but I didn't hear much relative context to the cost of environmental damage. I mean, from wildfires or smoke, affecting all the people with medical conditions. The second comment is I'm wondering when San Mateo City, as a microcosm of the whole world, will get to half of the methane or carbon fuel gases in dwelling structures. I mean, the reach codes are good, but when do we get to see some action in terms of greenhouse gas reduction? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mayor Rose, followed by Dishanali. Mary Rose, please unmute your mic.
Hi, thank you for taking up this most important climate issue. I think these are the most important climate steps you will take while you are on the council. My name is Mary Rose LeBaron. I live and work in San Mateo. I'm a member of the San Mateo Climate Action Team, and I'm a mom and a grandmother. I am in full support of the council voting for the strongest building decarbonization reach codes possible. I think you have heard how much money we will have access to with the Inflation Reduction Act in order to help San Mateans implement new electric powered heating and cooling. And it is extremely helpful and exciting to hear about the PCE offering over $3,000 to help install electric heat pumps and/or water heaters. So this will automatically make the electric heat pump option and electric water heater option less expensive than fossil fuel powered alternatives. This is great news for all San Mateans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dashel. Dashel, please unmute your mic.
Hello, my name is Dashel Leeds. I'm the conservation organizer for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. I like to support the hundreds of community members who have called on San Mateo to take action on existing buildings by signing the petition and speaking tonight. Please direct staff to develop an ordinance for existing buildings based on the Bay Area Reach Code's Model Reach Code for existing buildings, build in equity protections such as PCE's existing hardship exemption language, leverage incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act and numerous other sources, invest in community education, and let's lay the foundation for the end of flow of gas. Thank you so much, and I hope you take action tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ryan Montashemi. Please unmute your mic.
I thought we're about, how many left, Mr.?
We have 5 public comments remaining.
5 left? Okay. Let's please try to keep the comments compact if we can, please.
Right. Good evening, City Council. I support adopting full model reach codes. I support hardship exemptions. I support going forward with all of this right now and making sure that we're pursuing the funding opportunities in parallel, but let's not delay because local government needs to get on board for this to happen, or else the Inflation Reduction Act is relatively meaningless. And every resident of San Mateo currently lives in an existing building. But let's not forget, we need hardship exemptions, et cetera, to make sure that we are not disproportionately hurting certain groups. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jordan Grimes. Jordan, please unmute your mic.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor. Jordan Grimes, I'm the political director of the Peninsula Young Democrats and a lifelong San Matean, just joining the chorus of voices calling for acceleration of full model reach codes in our city. The time for milquetoast incrementalism on this issue, the time when that was in any way acceptable has long since passed. We need real progress now on climate resilience and sustainability, and that means significant policy action. I won't repeat the many strong points that have already been made. I want to mention that the UC Berkeley Local Government Climate Policy Tool, which analyzes and determines the most effective strategies to curb emissions for California cities, shows the top way to lower greenhouse gas emissions in our city to be urban infill intensification, VMT reduction, and heating and commercial electrification. Please embrace smart, effective, data-driven public policy and bold action in the pursuit of a livable future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ali Agsin, followed by Roisin McElarney, who will be our final comment this evening. Ali, please unmute yourself.
Let's move on to Roisin, and we'll come back to Holly if she's there.
Roisin, please unmute your mic.
Hi, so my name's Roisin McElarney. I'm 19 years old and a lifelong resident of San Mateo. I attend the local College of San Mateo, and I've been a climate activist, a youth climate activist for the past 6 years. And in doing so, I've met countless young activists like myself, countless young voters like myself, and I can tell you that the constituents and especially the young voters of this district care about climate action, and it's one of their top priorities that they will be voting on. So it is essential that the City Council switch to electric as soon as possible and end the flow of gas in San Mateo for good. This is what my generation cares about the most because it is a life-threatening issue for us. Yeah, so thank you to the City Council for your consideration and for being climate leaders on this. It's incredibly important.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ollie, could you please unmute your mic?
Okay, I think we're going to close public comment at this point. Make it official there. Bring it back for for council, final comments here. Make sure we give staff the direction they need. Councilmember Goethals.
Can I ask my colleagues about these options A and B on the EV infrastructure? I'm struggling with the differences and maybe what direction we should head in.
Please go ahead.
I think, given what I heard, I think A sounds like the most practical option to me. I could go with the other one, but
Could you put that on the screen, please? Thank you, Eric. Anything else?
I would just say I think it's most flexible. I think it's most practical cost-wise, and that's what makes most sense to me. But I'm not totally against option B.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I like B. I think it gives us a little more flexibility. Ultimately, the length of charge is going to increase the ability, I think. What Mr. Cacciano talked about is perhaps in a condo building, but if you have a multifamily apartment building, the parking space doesn't go with the apartment, so I think you can rotate vehicles in and out.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lee?
I agree with Deputy Mayor Pepin in favor of B.
And I'm also in favor of B.
That convinces me. That's what I was looking for. I appreciate the input. I would then move on to the next 5 proposals from staff.
Let me ask, do you support all electric buildings, the existing building, continuing of the existing reach codes?
Yes.
Okay.
And 1, 2, sorry, what did you say?
Continuing the existing reach codes that we have in place.
For new construction.
Oh,
For
yes.
new construction. Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course. 1, 2, 3, and 5, and then the discussion between 4A and 4B was interesting. I'm a little bit torn, but when I heard staff talk about the options for people who still need that backyard grill to use propane and not connect to their natural gas from their house, I think there are a few reasons not to go with 4B. I think 4B is a sign of things to come. That's how I come out on 1 through 5. I think we should go further and address the request from the advocates about existing buildings and those. I'm wondering, Mr. Mayor, if we should address that now or after we've addressed 1 through 5.
Please feel free while you're speaking. Go ahead and address that.
This is a radical change. Having talked to staff, we're really ahead of the curve, and that's where I want us to be. And I want to say to you, Mr. Mayor, I was thinking while I was sitting here and listening to everyone talk, I was reminded of 8 years ago in front of the Board of Supervisors. You and I sat there before PCE existed as the Board of Supervisors were considering what are we going to do? Are we going to study this thing called community choice aggregation? Is legislation going to make it so that it's not feasible? Well, you and I both spoke in favor of it, and they studied it, and the rest is history. I think PCE is one of the things that this county and the unanimous elected officials from this county who supported it will forever be proud of. I think that this too is something that we are going to forever be proud of. The electric vehicle movement towards electrifying all vehicles is in some ways more challenging because the electric cars, when they first came out, were far more expensive than these changes are to existing buildings. And there was also a huge industry of cars and oil and gas that stood in our way to making that change. I see the opportunity we have to electrify existing buildings and homes as something that may be even easier to accomplish with just as much impact. And so I am heartened to hear so many speakers come out to support it. I think that we are slightly ahead of staff, but I think that we should be directing staff tonight to do the things that need to be done, the exact same things that we are doing on this the ordinance in front of us, 1 through 5, which isn't that much. And from what Andrea said, we can meet this deadline of 2025, and that's what I think that we should do. I think that we should direct staff tonight to do the outreach with the community, the contractor engagement, the stakeholder engagement, the outreach with the community, so that when we come back, we have in 3 months or 6 months or however long it is, a fleshed out ordinance that can be passed that will go into effect in January of 2025. That's what I believe we can accomplish. And for all the reasons that everyone said tonight, that's what I think we should do. And as I mentioned, I am proud of your leadership on this issue over the last 10 years. I think that this directing staff to move in this direction tonight is something that I will continue to appreciate your leadership on this issue. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you very much. Who's next?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, given that we're over time, I agree to continuing on with all of the new construction mandates that we have. I agree with adopting REACH codes as it relates to existing buildings as adopted by the Sustainability Commission. That's 1, 2, 3, 4B, and 5. And I agree, we need to put the effort forward towards a decarbonization ordinance. And I think your game plan to do the outreach that's necessary to get it done is a good one. And I'm tremendously optimistic that we can get it done by January 1, 2020. I mean, get it done such that we would mandate, have an ordinance in place that would mandate replacement by January 1 of 2025. So thank you.
Thank you. Council? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, my thoughts are very similar in terms of the new construction in existing buildings, REACH codes that we've been talking about. But I do share a lot of the concerns that that I think staff raised very well in the report, and also that were brought up by some members of the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission, that doing too much too fast without doing the proper public outreach and not relying on online surveys where it's just see who you can get to that supports your position to fill that survey out. I think that that's very important, and I think that if we're going to do it right, we need more time, and we need to really. This is the type of thing where if you just judge by public sentiment in this meeting, you get one feeling, but then when you actually go talk to residents and talk with them about what this actually means, then you start the concerns really start pouring out. So I would be in favor of taking a little bit slower, doing it right, and basically echo Councilmember Goldels and Deputy Mayor Pepin's thoughts.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lee?
I support the new construction, all electric buildings. I favor option B. I agree with the REACH code options 1 through 5. I wasn't sure where you were on. You were saying you support A and you supported B. Deputy Mayor Pepin, what was the? Where are we on 4A and 4B?
Joe?
I can get to 4B.
You can? Okay.
I'm fine with 4B as well.
Yeah, 4B, I mean,
4B.
Everyone's against me, I know it. Yeah, no, 4B. And then I didn't mention on the electrical, I was in favor of B. I think I already said that when you asked, but.
You did.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just want to thank all of my colleagues here. Oh, you're not
done.
finished? Okay.
No.
And my mother, and no.
I guess after a deep dive with Peninsula Clean Energy, I feel comfortable putting a goalpost in the sand and saying, under certain conditions, what do we have to lose in saying we want to go all electric for permanent replacements for the heat pump air conditioners and the heat pump water heaters? If the funding is in place, it's cost neutral, it's feasible from our partnership capacity standpoint, and there's hardship exemptions and technical exemptions, I guess I'm having a hard time seeing the downside. It seems to me feasible and necessary to say, let's go that far, let's aim that far. I feel very comfortable that, based on the expertise of PCE and the community surveys that have already been done that showed overwhelming support, as well as the organizing efforts of the Climate Action Team, which had hundreds of people supporting in this petition. So I think a well-crafted policy with some checkpoints seems like a very possible path forward, and I'm having trouble seeing where we're getting stuck.
So I think what you're hearing from the rest of the council is agreement that we can meet this, that for many of our residents in January 2025, it is feasible and economically feasible to replace appliances with all electric appliances. The part of the ordinance that is difficult to draft without doing the contractor engagement and the stakeholder engagement is how to draft the economic hardship or feasibility part of it. When are we going to determine that it's not feasible? When are we going to determine that it's so much of an economic hardship? And that part, I think that staff need at least, 3 months, 6 months to do the engagement and outreach to craft an ordinance that will go into effect on the same timeline. So I am heartened to hear, I think, unanimous support from our council for the ordinance that you're talking about that gets passed on a slightly different schedule, so that we can draft the right economic hardship, economic feasibility language, but gets implemented on the same schedule. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just offer, I want to, Joe had asked at the beginning of the meeting about the advocate proposal and whether or not that could be, according to those timeframes, could be adopted. And so staff has not done the stakeholder outreach or the contractor engagement on the proposal, right? And so feasibly, this could continue to be evaluated, embedded. We could work on the hardship exemption and other infeasibility language and still adopt the proposal that would meet the January 1, 2025 timeline.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, so that wouldn't be adopted with this update of the REACH codes, according to your proposal?
Correct.
It would happen after?
By October 17th, which is about 4 weeks from now, staff is going to work on the proposed REACH codes that are on the slide. And as soon as proposed REACH codes are adopted, it is in staff's work plan to evaluate the decarbonization ordinance and the proposal by the advocacy group.
And then you will come back to us with your analysis, right? I understand that. Yeah.
And how long would that analysis take, more or less, do you think?
It's hard to say. I mean, I'd also like to return to the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission and do a lot of outreach with contractors.
So it would be a full-on analysis.
Well, yeah, because I'd like to present cost information like I did for every single building type and
No, I think the more
too.
the better. Personally, I think that. I think I was contacted by a lot of residents who shared a lot of concerns about this, and it was interesting that none of them spoke today on this. So I think it's going to be careful. I think it's going to be maybe a challenge, but it's going to be very important to make sure you're talking with the neighborhood associations, you're talking with all the other groups out there that might have a opinion on this.
So let me ask, how long have we been engaged in outreach?
For the REACH codes?
Yes.
Our first meeting was in April.
In
to
April.
the Sustainability and Infrastructure Commission.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily include this proposal, right?
Exactly.
Right.
That's
the
the
engagement's
important thing.
focused on REACH codes that are on the slide.
Right. But I think people have read the newspaper, they've seen the news on TV. I think people are aware in San Mateo that the city council has been moving in this direction. Since we established, I was a founder with Peninsula Clean Energy in 2014, 2 years before it actually became an entity in this county. I brought Marin Clean Energy here to talk with our board of supervisors so we could create that, right? And here we are all today with our renewable energy from Peninsula Clean Energy. So I just want to say this, since everybody else took the time to explain a few things. My grandmother was a welder in the shipyards in World War II. She breathed a lot of nasty stuff building those ships so that we could survive. There was no guarantee that that ship was going to survive or that we were going to win the war, but she kept welding, okay? And we got through it, and we're here now. But we're now facing another existential challenge. So yeah, I mean, we may get some adverse kind of analyses here, but I think that we need to maintain we have to and we can do this attitude. I believe in positive attitude. I'm very optimistic. I've seen things that looked almost impossible to do, turn around and get done. So that said, I want to say that I'm strongly in favor of maintaining the new construction REACH codes. I like option B for the EV charging infrastructure. I'm good on 1, 2, 3, 4B, and 5. And I like the decarbonization strategy as is proposed by San Mateo Climate Action Team with the 2025 date for end of gas burning appliances and 2030 for the end of gas date. So thank you. Is that all the direction you need now? Thank you. Then we'll go on to the other city council meeting in about 5 minutes. Thank you.